Well, hey everyone, this is Don Smith, and today I want to welcome you to a brand new video on a brand new camera that was just released by Sony. I just got it late yesterday afternoon, the brand new A7R IV, and what a great camera this is. I had an opportunity as being part of the Sony Artisan program to come into New York about a month ago and actually test this camera with various setup locations and various models in New York. But the cameras were tethered down, and I, being a landscape photographer, really couldn't get outside and use it. And there was a meeting that was going to be held near Central Park, but I unfortunately had to get back because I had some other travel that I had to do. And then I got to once again experience it where I could get outdoors up in Oregon about 3 weeks ago at the Condo 3.0 event. And I shot with it for 2 days with the 200-600. I was doing comparisons with the A9. And I'll tell you, it's an amazing camera. 61 megapixels, 10 frames a second. Let's see, 4K video. I don't think they did a lot of update in the video area. I'm not a video person. It will record 4K video at 30p. But this is talking to Mark Weir with Sony, who's kind of oversees the engineers. He basically told me that they've rebuilt everything, either upgraded or rebuilt or redesigned everything in this camera. LD Nadia, who's our senior product engineer, or excuse me, senior product manager, told me 70 new or updated features in this camera. Better water sealing. I just took a note on some. One of the big ones, the exposure compensation dial. They finally got a lock-in, lock-out button on that. How many times have you bumped that in manual mode? Especially, you have to be in some sort of auto something. And if you go to auto ISO, which I was using over in Africa just recently, real easy to bump that exposure comp. Well, now you can lock it down. They got a new joystick, and the little gray dot that we used to move around, the focus dot with the joystick, now you can set a color to it, and I'm going to show you how to do that. The shutter and aperture buttons have been extended out, so they're not so recessed in. So if you're working in cold weather and you got to use gloves, you're going to have a better tactile experience with this. They've extended the grip out. I'm always pairing it with a battery grip. I don't know. It's just an ergonomic thing with me. I just like the feel. You know, I grew up basically in my career, most of my career for the past 43 years, I use some form of a motor drive. And as you know, the motor drives are built in the cameras, but now I can put two of the newer batteries in here, and I can shoot for a couple of days with no worries of my batteries going down. Dual memory card slots. Both are UHS-2, the really fast SD card compatible now. I'm going to show you how to set that up. Brand new hot shoe with which now will accept the new digital microphone from Sony. And I think hopefully this is going to go across all their pro level cameras in the future. Let's see, 5.7 dots, 5.7 million dots for the live view and the electronic view function. And it's an amazing screen you're seeing now. We're basically seeing, even outdoors, I love it because I've just started shooting landscape with it. And in dusk and dawn light, when it's really low, the kind of light I love to shoot, you can just see what your shadows are doing, what your highlights are doing, where are the edges, am I in focus? You know, and you're half asleep sometimes at 5:30 in the morning. You guys know, you've been out there. You know what this is all about. A new interval timer that I haven't played with, but that's going to be a lot of fun. A whole new autofocus sensor, 567 phase detection auto points. It still does have contrast auto detection, but then it goes right into phase. That's going to cover 70% of the viewfinder, whether you're in vertical or horizontal mode. You go into APS-C mode. This is really cool. You're going to get 26.6 megapixel file, 325 points. That's going to cover the entire frame. How cool is that if you want to go long? I was doing that the other night, shooting a full moon. Real-time tracking. Gosh, we're going to talk about this when I get through that menu setting. And both animal and human eye focus and recognition. I did not have this camera on my recent Africa trip. I wish I would have. It would have been killer, but I had the A9 and that's still a killer camera. Let's see, the autofocus. Eldine told me the autofocus is making decisions at 0.02 of a second. I was trying to ask him how to get into back button and go from manual mode to auto mode, and he was kind of laughing. Why would you ever want to get out of auto mode? But I am going to teach you how to do that for those of you that do want to take over manual. I guess it's just a kind of a control freak thing with me. And lastly, I know I mentioned the 10 frames a second, but you got to realize this is a 61 megapixel sensor. We're up in medium format range now. And you can shoot continuous raw bursts, get this, up to 68 straight frames. How cool is that? All right, but this video is how I've set this camera up, not for sports shooting, but for my landscapes. And I want to go over that because I'm going to be going out on the road here. And let me get this back up there. There we go. I'm going back out on the road starting next Wednesday, and I'm going back out to Wyoming with a couple workshops at Grand Teton in the fall color out there that I'm really excited about. And Ron Madra will be joining me on that workshop. And then both of us are about 3 days later heading to Scotland for the entire month of October. 2 back-to-back 10-day workshops in the Scottish Highlands. I come home and I have 1 day turnaround time, and my wife and I, Barry, will be going right back to Utah to Bryce Zion, a few weeks off, and then we have our December Monument Valley workshop. So it's going to be really busy between now and basically Christmas. So I'm glad I got the new camera. I've got the new 200-600. Let's go through these settings. This is what I have set up. By no means are these the be-all and end-all for landscape. I'm just showing you how I've set my camera up. I know a lot of you out there have ordered this camera, and this may give you a leg up in getting set up. All right, we're going to start in camera icon 1, and we're on page 1 of 15 pages here. So we sit back. We got a lot to go through. File format, I shoot everything raw mode, but here's where you can go in and shoot raw JPEG. I actually just did a shoot last night with my son, Aaron, who's trying to make it in the music business. Please check out his new EP. It's on all the popular music streaming sites, including iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play. And the album is called Atmosphere. And he's going with his middle name, which is Aaron Cole. So if you just search Aaron Cole, you may see a rapper by the same name come up. He didn't rip off his name. We didn't know about this guy. That's an honest story. Aaron just wanted to go with his middle name. Recommendation from Barry that if he did hit it, he might have a little bit of privacy in his life. So that's why he's going under Aaron Cole. But I last night shot in that mode, raw plus JPEGs, because I wanted to pull a couple quick JPEGs, get them up on his social media site. But all my landscape isn't raw. Now, raw file type, you can have compressed, uncompressed. I know I read a lot of the tech gurus out on the web that say they can't see the difference. I don't care. I'm old school. I don't want to give up anything, so I'm going into uncompressed mode. JPEG quality, I would go up to extra fine if you are going to do raw and JPEG. JPEG image size, go with the largest that you get, which is currently 60 megabytes. I don't know why you would want to go down from there unless you just want to back up for the web. Aspect ratio, I just leave it at 3:2. That's the standard viewfinder of a 35 millimeter camera. But if you want to go in and play around with it, that's where you would go find it. APS-C Super, I'm going to add this as a setup menu. If you look to the right on the top up there, you see a star. When we get to that towards the end of the video, I'll show you how we go in and set those up. But this is how you would come in and do the crop sensor. So the other night on the moon, I turned this on. I had the 200-600 Sony, the new lens, racked out to 600 with a 2x converter with Sony, which is razor sharp. That got me 12 millimeters. And then on my A9, I went to Super 35 millimeter on, which added another 600 millimeter, got me out to 1800 millimeters. It was too big. I was right on the moon, full frame on the moon. I couldn't put any of the landscape on there. So for right now, I just leave that off. And when I need it, it'll be set up in the other menu. All right, let's come on up along to number 2, long exposure noise reduction. I turn that on. This is for night shooting. I have yet to test the camera for night shooting. Don't know if I'm going to be testing out in Grand Teton because there's grizzly and bison running around. And oh yeah, oh by the way, about 3 years ago, I got almost steamrolled by a bison that came across the highway, was almost hit by a car, and I had my back turned, didn't know anything about it, and he took off on a dead run at me, and literally 10 to 12 feet away, for whatever reason, for the grace of God, he decided to jump about a 5-foot high wooden fence and went out in the meadow and then turned around and pawed the ground like an angry bull. And you can believe that I got out of there after that. So I was very lucky. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do night exposures out there. We will see on that. If you're in RAW mode, just, oh, by the way, high ISO noise reduction doesn't matter. If you're in JPEG, then that will become active and you could set that. But because I'm in RAW, that's not even an option. Colorspace Adobe Rgb. You're going to get your choice of sRGB, Adobe Rgb. That's the largest color space. I know when you import into Lightroom, you're going to be in ProPhoto RGB, which is even bigger. Just stay, you know, the magazine industry, what's left of the magazine industry is Adobe Rgb. So I just leave it alone and set it there, one less setting to shoot. All right, I'm a landscape shooter, so I'm shooting single shooting, but if you want to change up, here's where you can go into all your different settings. I know in the workshops we do group photos, and I'll come in here to the 10-second timer setting and I'll frame the scene and then jump in with my group and take a picture. Bracket settings, I don't do the bracket settings. If I do it manually. The internal shoot function, I'm going to play dumb right here, guys, because I really don't know what this one is yet. Again, this is brand new with me. I'm learning these as I go, but I do not know what this one is. So I'm not, you know, you're going to have to go Google that one. Pixel shift. This is very cool add-on. I did not test it in Oregon nor New York, but it's going to allow you to shift pixels, I believe, 16 times by a half a pixel. And if I can find my notes here, let's see, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, I'm losing it on the notes, but it's a huge, massive file. It's like 260 megabytes, something like that. And I thought I wrote it down on my notes here. I am looking, but I just, either I'm going over it or I don't see it. And, oh, here it is. I found it, 240 megapixels. Okay, so what it does, you have to be on a subject that's completely stationary. So if you have any moving foliage or a river or creek or clouds in the sky, it's going to look really weird. But if you're shooting like, I remember the first time this came out in the A7R I did this beautiful red rock formation in Sedona, and it just created this massive file that is just awesome. Right down here, these memory recalls, these are great for those of you that do both video and stills. You can set up your cameras on a recall, and actually you get 3 recalls to excuse me, set up one maybe for your landscape shooting, you can set up one for your sports shooting or wildlife, and you can set up one for video. That's where you would go into that. All right, select media. I always just go off of slot 1, and you might want to be aware if you're an A7R III shooter, slot 1 is now as you're looking at it, when you open up the card door, it's the uppermost. That used to be card 2, slot 2. They flipped them. I don't know the reason, but they and oh, by the way, because I got caught off guard with that last night. And so all this means is when you hit playback, you want to know what slot you're playing back on. I always just, set it for slot number 1. Register custom shoot. Here's where I'm telling you can go in and set up the 3 different custom shoots. I have yet to do that. And you can set all of these up. You can take those check marks on and off as you wish. So that's what that is. Let me get back to the menu. Let's go to page 5. I don't have a lens attached right now. So that's why you're just seeing a grayed out manual focus. Priority set in autofocus single and an autofocus continuous. I always just go with balanced emphasis. Been doing that forever since all 5 years I've been with Sony. I've been doing that. Focus area. Here's where you can come down. If I had a lens on, now the reason, it is actually showing. Here's where the new real-time tracking is, gang. This thing is awesome. I used this for 2 weeks shooting safari over in Africa, and my misses were slim to none. This is where I set this in expanded flexible spot, and I actually go with small spot. You get a choice of small, medium, or large. I can't show you because I don't have a lens attached on here. My apologies. But if you go into small tracking, it's kind of a little confusing. I get it because Sony is marketing this as real-time tracking. But then when you actually come into the focus area, it just says tracking. But this is your real-time tracking. Oh my gosh, there's no reason in the world to deviate off of this at all. At all. Just leave it on tracking. You're going to be blown away. It's something what I call sticky tracking. My colleague and Sony Artisan friend, Patrick Murphy Racy, calls it what does he call it? A sticky monkey tracking or something like that. But it literally will grab onto your subject, and wherever your subject moves in that frame, it won't let go. It's the most, 43 years I've been shooting actions, either sports, wildlife, you name it. It's the most incredible autofocus system I have ever used. You can check out a blog I wrote. I know I'm late to the party, and that's how I started it, but real-time tracking's the real deal. Okay, let's go down to focus area limit. I do not use that. Lot of stuff that you can take check marks off of most of this stuff if you want. Just tailor it into what you want. I don't really worry about that. I know what I'm doing with what my settings are out there. All right, switch vertical and horizontal autofocus. I'm going to put AF point only. I want that on. Autofocus illuminator. I'm going to turn that off. I don't want any light coming on when I'm shooting. Face eye set. Oh yeah, you got to have that on. Human, here's where you come into now animal. They're adding new algorithms all the time, so keep looking for upgrades on the version of whatever this camera. I think I'm right out of the box 1.0, obviously. I don't think they would have a new version out yet, but they will be writing more, I'm being told, to more animals. They're writing the algorithms as we speak. Left eye, you can go in and set what eye. That's how fine-tuned it is. I just leave it on auto. Did that on my son last night. It worked great. Face eye frame display. That's if you want the little box to come on to show you. I kind of like that. It's just a confirmation. Animal eye display, same thing. I'm leaving it on. I know this has nothing to do with landscape, but just telling you what I'm doing in my settings. Pre-autofocus. Do not like that. I leave it off. I start autofocus. I haven't played with that yet. So that's a new one that I'm going to have to play with. Autofocus area registration, I just leave off. Delete registration while we don't have anything set. Here's we go. The focus frame color. Yes, we've been lobbying for this for last 2-3 years. You get your choice of red or white. I love red. I want to see it when I put my eye up. I don't want it. That gray gray focus area used to got lost in the background all the time. Now I put the camera up, I know exactly where my focus point is. Autofocus area clear, I just leave that on off. Okay, let's go on to page 8. Display the autofocus area. Yeah, I want that. If that bugs you, just go in and turn it off. Phase detection area. I turn that off. That's a lot of points flying around. This one, I'm going to turn this on just for the heck of it. If I'm shooting birds or something, and let's say the bird's going from left to right, and then the bird goes out of my frame. Supposedly, and I can't say this because I haven't shot this, but what I'm being told is it will pick up the next object that comes in on the left side of your frame. So it kind of is like a circle. Do you get it? If it goes out of the right side of your frame, whatever is next that comes in the left side of your frame, or you jerk the camera to your right to try to catch up with that bird, it's going to look over on the left side. So it's going to keep circulating. This is where you would go in if you're having problems with your lenses. You think they're back focusing and or focusing. Here's where you'd go adjust it. I'll tell you, I've been shooting Sony cameras for over 5 years, and I've never once had to go in and adjust for a lens. They've just been dead on the mark. Reset exposure comp. No, I'm just leaving it. I don't shoot anything in auto mode. I'm not an auto mode guy. The only thing I will do is, as I said, I will at times go into auto ISO. I will do that if, like, let's say there's wind blowing, we're shooting flowers. When I was shooting Safari in Africa the last couple of weeks, I did it. So, and then I just left my aperture wide open, and then I selected the shutter based on the action going. ISO settings, you can do this, but I think the function menu on the back's a little bit quicker. And here's where you can put in your expansion or your range limits, and you can go down as low as 50, which I do sometimes if I'm shooting where I want to get a motion in the water and maybe I've forgotten my neutral density filters and I'm trying to cut light. Now, I haven't tested high ISO at all, but I'm hearing from the artisans that did test the pre-production cameras that we're getting about one stop better of light, which tells me we're well up over 6400 ISO. We're in the 12,800 range. That should be looking really good. So for all you astrophotographers, I think you're going to love this camera. I'll let you know as soon as I'm able to test some night on it. Let's go to page 10, exposure steps. I always leave those at a third. You can set them into halves or fulls. ALF with shutter. Well, you're going to see here in a moment, I'm doing something a little different with my shutter, so I just leave that alone. This is all your flash stuff. I don't use flash at all in my landscape. In fact, I don't even own a Sony flash. When I was shooting Canon and I was shooting sports and corporate work, yes. The flashes I use nowadays, I really don't even use flash anymore. I use the Stella lights by Light and Motion. They're a company out of the Monterey Bay area here over where I live in Marina, California. Hey, check their stuff out. They are awesome. And that's what I shot my son with last night. So you can go to my Facebook or Instagram page or Twitter and check that all out. White balance. For landscape, I just use auto. I think they're so close. I know a lot of guys will come in here and just use daylight. That's a personal choice. I'm shooting raw mode, so I don't care. If I was shooting JPEG, then it matters, okay? Priority set in auto white. I can tell you I have no idea what that means because that's brand new. I haven't played with it, and if it isn't brand new, I've missed it in the A7R3. I'll have to find that one out. Dynamic range optimizer. If I am shooting JPEGs, I would have that on. Creative style, that's going to affect the JPEG. And it's also going to affect, you got to remember this, it's going to affect your playback on your camera because that is a JPEG. That's a processed JPEG that you're seeing either in the electronic viewfinder or on the LCD. Picture profile, I'm leaving that off for now. That's more of a video thing. Shutter, auto white balance lock. No, not worried about that. Not for landscape. Focus magnification, no limit. If I want to blow something up and see if I'm sharp, I want it. The initial, you can start wherever. I would start. My recommendation would be to start at 1 and then go up to 5.9. AF in focus magnification. Yes, I want that on. Manual focus assist. No, I hate this thing. This is the deal when you turn your lens to focus, it pops it up 100% enlargement. And that just bugs me, because if I'm doing landscape and I'm low on the ground and I got some pretty little tiny flowers I want in the foreground, usually the manual focus will go where the focus dot is set, which is usually on my camera, middle of the camera. So that's going to blow past those flowers and catch whatever the next plane of focus is. And I don't want that. Peaking setting, yeah, I want that peaking display on. I'm testing this. I used to go high. I'm going to test it at mid, but I may go up to high. You get a choice of 4 colors now. I've always gone with red. That just seems what's comfortable to me, but that's up to you. Anti-flicker shoot. Patrick Murphy Racy, again, I got to appreciate his ability to dissect these cameras. He's awesome. This is if you're shooting under, let's say, something like a sodium vapor light or any kind of gas light, a sodium vapor, neons, fluorescence, something like that. Those are gas lights, and there is a pulse to those lights that if this was turned off, you could get a misfire in your exposures. One frame could look dark, next frame could look semi-good, the next frame could look right on the mark. If you go in and turn this anti-flicker on, it balances that all out, and frame to frame to frame looks good. So I'm off the top of my head trying to think of, if your parents out there, your kids are playing basketball, let's say, or they're a football player. It's football season now, high school football, and you happen to score a pass and you get on the sidelines, you want to turn this guy on, because those stadium lights, I'll guarantee you, are cycling, and they're gas powered, and this will just help keep your exposures consistent. Face registration, I don't use that in landscape, so we're going to skip over. I'm going to go into camera 2 now. This is pretty much all the video settings, which, as I said, I'm not going to speak to this. I do video to promote some of my stuff, but I am not by any means, guys, a video expert. I know most of you watching this probably know more about video than I do. So there are a few things in here that I do want to get to. And here's where you can set your silent shooting mode. If you don't want your shutter firing, this is where you would go to turn that off. Electronic front curtain shutter. Yeah, you could go in there and turn that off. That has to do if you're playing around with the flash. Release without a lens, no, I don't ever want it doing that. Release without a card, nope, that's a way to get lazy and think you have a card in your camera and you don't. Steady shot, I leave it on all the time, as well as on the lenses. I'm being told by our engineers and our tech people that the camera and the lens are communicating, and it will pick which steady shot to go with, either the lens or the camera, or a combination of the both. So just leave them on. Steady shot settings, I'm just going to leave that one alone. I haven't dove into that one enough to really intelligently comment on that. So let's get over to page 6. Nothing there. Page 7, display button. I like display monitor. I leave everything on. I want to see all of this information, but if you want to kind of cut down the junk on the edges of your screen as you're looking through your camera, you can set that up the way you want. Same thing with the finder. This is just how I have mine set up. So that's where I'm at with that. The frame rate, actually this one, if I had a lens on, I just leave it at auto. Okay, let's go to finder frame rate. I want it high. This is the highest of any Sony camera they've ever produced. Now, what are the drawbacks? Why wouldn't you want to leave it high? Well, it is using more battery power, but short of that, anything that can help me look through that camera, shut down my non-shooting eye, look through the viewfinder, and you're kind of looking at a mini computer. So you know, if you're blowing highlights, hopefully you have those zebra settings. We're going to talk about that next, and you can see how much density in the shadows there is. Did you capture them? Did you not? You know, always have that histogram on. So zebra settings, that's highlight alert. That's Sony's way of saying highlight alert. I want those on. I found over the years that 100 works best, but you can test these things out and figure out what works best and works best at your comfort level. Grid lines. I always like to do the rule of thirds, but you also get offered a square grid or a diagonal plus square grid, or you can just turn the whole thing off. But being landscape, I always like having the rule of thirds up. And the exposure set guide, I just leave that off. Oops, let me get back up. We're going to go over to page 7, or excuse me, page 8. Live view display. Yes, I want that setting effect on. I want to see exactly what the sensor is capturing. Continuous shoot length. Nah, I don't know. That may be a video. That's probably video length. I don't care. Auto review. You know, this is a personal choice. 2 seconds. And if I like it, I just retap it again. So, but I do like after I've done a kind of a group of shots to take a look. Okay, I'm sorry. I jumped out of page 8. We're going to page 9 now. Custom key. Okay. Here's where if you want to do back button focus, you guys, you would come down. I assign mine now to number 3. You see number 3 light up in white there. But you also could assign it to number 2. You could put it on your lens. You can do it anywhere. I happen to set mine there. And then you have to come in and you have a whole array of screens you have to scroll through. But you want to find this one, AF, MF, Control Hold. And that's the one you want to set. And now when you set that button 3, which is AF on, you hit it once. If you're in autofocus, you hit it once, you're in manual focus. You can take over in manual focus. Conversely, if you're in manual focus, you hit it, you're in autofocus. So it's on the back button. It takes it off the shutter, but I may have passed over the shutter. So let's go through this and then I'll back up and show you where to turn the shutter off. All of this is normal, dial EV off, yeah, power, focus. Not going to worry about that. Movie button now. And let's go to 11. I think I've skimmed over the shutter. Yeah, let's go backwards. It might be on one of the first couple pages. So let's go. I know it's down towards the bottom. And let's hope I can find it here. And it will say shutter. It'll give you a command. I just had this up earlier today. My apologies. Well, when I cut the movie, I'm going to go ahead and figure out where it is. The network stuff, I don't really play with any of this stuff, tell you the truth. If you do, you guys can dive into it and you can do your own video and I'll learn from you. Playback, same thing. You get 4 pages of stuff. I really just leave it all alone. I come into my little suitcase. This is where some cool stuff is hidden. Display quality on page 2. Yep, turn it to high. This is normally in 1 minute, but I just left it alone so this screen wouldn't be going down on you guys. Auto power off, standard, all the rest. My touch operation. Okay, so you can touch focus. You can pinch out to enlarge a photo, but that's it. We're in the world of smartphones now. And I really wish Sony would allow us to start doing touch on everything on the back of our cameras. But I'm not one of the engineers, and there's a good reason why. But hopefully in the future, near future, it'll be there. I don't know if that's a firmware update or not. We'll let you know if it is. All of these are just the touchpad settings. Nothing in here. Language, you're going to set this up, you guys, in your date and time. When you first turn the camera on, it'll walk you right through it. Area setting, IPTC info. My copyright info, I do set my name in there, but I use an IPTC template in Photo Mechanic and or Lightroom. So I am going to check this out a little more and see if I can add a little more data, but I find it cumbersome to do it on the camera. I'd rather do it once I've imported the pictures you know, into whatever program, be it Photomechanical Lightroom. I will say if I was back shooting sports full time, I would probably really look closely into this because I could set up a lot of stuff ahead of time. So when it flowed into my editor, he or she would already have it, you know, be well ahead of the game. File, folder settings, none of this stuff. Here's where you would check your current version, which right now should be 1.0. I just got this camera, so I don't think there is an update yet, but you never know. You always want to check. And here's where you go in. I haven't loaded any of my settings, but here's where I'd go in and load some of my settings, or excuse me, I would, you know, want to do, the ones I normally will put on this are the ones I frequent, like format, ASPC, things of that sort. That's where I would go in and, well, actually here and add an item. And here's, you know, you can scroll through everything. So let's add that one in. Oops, I want to stay on menu number 1. It's added. Long exposure noise reduction just got added. Let's add color space. So that's how, whoops, that added to menu number 2. But you get a couple of menus in there to use. So I would take some time and scroll through there and just add the ones that you find frequently. Camera cleaning's one I always have in there. When you go to clean your camera, you want to be in cleaning mode. I know there's no, there's not a mirror box anymore, but there are shutter blades, that type of thing. You just don't, you want to be in cleaning mode if you're going to do a wet or brush clean in your camera. And also the other one I have is format, because when I do put cards in on a new shoot, I want to format both cards 1 and 2. I skipped over something here that I think is pretty important, and I want to go back and find it. Sorry about this. Let me see if I can find this. File, folder settings, file settings. Oh gosh. Okay. And I'm going to apologize to you. It's where you set up what is writing to both cards. And currently, and I may have just missed this in another menu. I thought it was all in here. Let's just go back real slowly. If I can't find it here, then I will put it up as a note on the video. And I'll tell you where to go in and find it. And no, I'm not finding it in here. So either I'm going over it, I'm missing it, or I'm just, it's in another menu. But that's where I would tell card slot 1. I want both my card slots now that they're the UHS2 cards, the really fast writing cards. I want them both to be able to write simultaneous movie and stills. So in other words, whatever's recording to my primary number 1 slot, I want a backup on card number 2. I lobbied very hard with the engineers when we were in the development stages of the A9 to put dual card slots in. And I remember at the time I was team photographer with the San Jose Sharks, and they said, you've got to come up with some good reasons because we don't have the real estate to give up. And I told them about team photo I was going to be doing, and I said, I just, no way I could trust the camera with 1 card slot. And I got about 2 more down of 7 on a list, and they said, stop, you've convinced us, we'll figure it out. So that's where we had the smaller card that went in, but now we have the 2 SDs, the fast, they're writing at the same speed. So I'll find that. It's going to be up on your screen as I'm talking right now, where to set that up. So that's about it. That's how I set up the new A7R Mark IV. This is just such a killer camera. A lot of people just think it's an upgrade of 42 to 61 megapixels, and if you're hearing that, it's completely wrong. You've got a completely rebuilt camera inside. As I said, 70 new and or improved features inside the camera, processors, sensors, new SSI bus that they call. That's the first thing that the image is fed through. So it's doing some pre-processing, just all the way along the track of doing this stuff. I get lost speaking to these engineers, but I see their excitement, and this is just a terrific camera. All right, so I hope this has helped you. I'm going to be using this every day starting next week out in Grand Teton. I'm excited. You're going to start seeing my pictures come up on social media. I will be posting some blogs about my experience with this camera. Really love it. And if you'd like to check out a blog I've written about both this camera and the A9, I ran some tests up in Oregon with the 200 to 600 Sony lens, and I've written a blog called Real-Time Tracking is the Real Deal. So you can just go to my website, donsmithphotography.com. On the homepage, click on the blog link and go backwards one or two blogs and you will find that blog. So until next time, we will be talking to you again out in beautiful Grand Tetons National Park, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. This is Don Smith. You take care.